Hello and welcome to Speaking from Ignorance. This is the second part of our conversation with Deech, so if you haven't already, go back and listen to the previous episode. Now, on with the show.
So you said right at the start, or when are we? A long time ago that you're doing this engineering stuff right now, but that's not what you want to do your career in. You find it interesting, but that's not what you're you already know you want to do your career in something else.
Yeah.
I'm in a really similar position now where the PhD I'm doing I think is really cool, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So
is a PhD
right now
there 5 years still? 5-6 years?
3.5.
It's 4 years of funding. It really depends on what funding you get. Where I am, it's usually 4. But the thing is, it's calendar year funding. And I started in August, so my funding runs out at the end of 2022. So I basically have 3 years and 3 months. Yeah, so I already know what I want to, the area that I want to try next, and that's machine learning and AI. I would love to have a mentor for that who's able to guide me in that area, to be have you tried doing this, or hey, this is something that's really cool. At the moment, it's basically me and a few friends who are really interested in that. We're just sort of brainstorming together, and that's enough for me right now. But I am just self-learning, off YouTube or podcasts or books. It's just me trying to get as much
Or our
knowledge as
sponsor
possible.
for this week, Skillshare.
I've literally never used Skillshare.
I have.
Wait, is Skillshare actually your Patreon this week?
No.
No.
We
don't have
This is a
sponsors.
super small podcast.
I think it's fantastic that you've mentioned mentors. I am a professional development coach for disadvantaged undergraduates, right? So college students. And one of the things that I am always telling them is that, you should be seeking out other mentors. Obviously, I'm there to be a professional development coach for them. But people to be able to tell them, what a sector's really like, or what pays like, or what your career progression's like. Mentors is that sort of source of information, right? Something I also tell them is that life is long and you can try many things, right? Loads of people have, just a very varied career, and they'll change around a lot, right? And you don't have to go through the sort of pain and the sort of effort to try every single industry. That is what mentors are for, right? You can just communicate with people, see what you do like, see what you don't. Myself, I went down a similar route like you, Deech. I went on LinkedIn a lot. I spoke to a lot of people. So graduating from university, I knew I was really passionate about social mobility. I really liked, working with data. Guys, don't laugh at me. Small data.
Yeah.
And
So how big are your data files? Jack,
they're like Excel files. So
Guys, it's not about size.
anyway, So I would reach out to leaders in that field. I'd reach out to CEOs of policymakers in the sort of social mobility space, and I'd speak to them like, hey, what's your job like? And I remember I remember being a university student and talking to them and be like, just help me. I'm trying to break into the space. Just tell me how. I just need some sort of footing. And something which I didn't realize until kind of later this year is there is nothing that they can do to sort of help you. It's a sort of thing where you have to invent your own way, and there is no sort of fixed route. You could do many things in your life, and you just have to work out how you personally are going to get that. I work with a lot of students looking at their CVs, and a lot of them will sit down with me.
Are you volunteering to do this, or are you paid? Is this part of your
This
your
is
job?
my full-time job. So
Okay.
I guess I've kind of
But at university, Jack was volunteering for charity organizations or like social mobility stuff.
Yeah,
like-
It's admirable, man.
I've stared at a lot of CVs, so I do know what a good sort of corporate CV is. I normally work with corporate students, so people interested in banking, finance, global markets, consulting, that sort of stuff.
All about that big money.
Yeah, that's a big money job. But yeah,
So, do you mentor them from like? Are you like a consistent mentor, or do they just reach out to you with questions? Like, are you like checking up on them like every few weeks or progress checks or whatever?
It's a personalized program, so yeah, I am their sort of consistent mentor.
Okay.
How frequently they reach out to me, that's really up to them. I'm not going to chase them. I've got too many people.
Yeah.
I mentor about 80 students, so I don't really have the time to be
80?
chasing. Yeah, I don't really
Oh,
have
wow.
the time to chase them.
It goes back to what you were saying out there about like having the balls to just ask someone, like just go on LinkedIn, and just ask questions. Don't be afraid of looking dumb because you don't know what you're doing. Like just ask so that you will know. But getting over that initial hurdle is tough.
Yeah.
And what you said about there being no fixed rules as well, but I like another thing I got from that section of what you were talking about, was, and from both of you actually, was that but people will reply. They are willing to be of any help that they can be.
Just surprisingly, yeah. Sometimes you email someone and you're like, yeah, I mean, they won't always, but sometimes you email someone and you'll just be like, nah, this is some super big name. There's no way, this is some big honcho. And then they just send an email
But
back.
it turns out everybody thinks that way, and then nobody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first email they've had in months from some randomer. So they go, yeah, sure, I'll help.
I was going to ask Deej. It sounds like you've secured a few mentors so far. I was just wondering, what was the most useful thing you've gained from those mentors, and do you have any sort of best practices you've learned in terms of securing mentors?
They're not like the same kind of mentors that you do for your students. They're not like I check up on them. I reach out to them every week with an update. It was kind of like an initial conversation where I try to set up a phone call, and one phone call, and I just want to like learn like everything I need to know, and then I will follow up. Like I kind of want to do like a 6-month follow up because I want to show like, especially with a career like design, like you got to show something. You can't just say something. People want to see, like when you're pitching someone in design, they're like, show me your senior capstone. My senior capstone will be completely different than someone else's senior capstone. Like mine was an engineering project with very little design and then mostly coordination. Whereas a design student, there would be like, okay, here's my ideation, here's all the sketches I've done, here's all the renders, here's the process. Like I have my own process. It's different. So for me, like the biggest advice they've given me is to be more consistent with sticking to that design plan, because right now I'm climbing up a hill, like, and the hill keeps getting higher up as I get farther in my career, because I've been out of school on going on 2 years. So for them, they're like, okay, well, if you're playing catch up, you don't have 4 years of studio experience where you've done sketches, renders, and all that stuff. You got to start doing that every week. You got to do like a bunch of sketches every day, like just practice the raw sketching and all that kind of style, and then worry about the technical stuff, because you probably will be able to figure that out based on your experience in engineering. Like I could probably learn to do a 3D model that's ultra complex. It might not be as best as it can be as someone who's been doing it for a while, but I'll be able to figure it out. But like the raw ideating is what they're more concerned about. It's not so much about like how flashy and cool is this render and the 3D model. It's what was the process to get there, and that's something that I have to work on. If you look at my website, it's a lot of finished products. I don't like to put my steps on there, just because I feel like a lot of my process up till now was entertainment. Like what do people want to see? Like what is this coolest graphic I can make? And that was because my audience was not a design audience. My audience was friends and families and like my immediate network. So like for them, it's not so much I care about like, okay, what was the initial idea? It was, I mean, I can write that down in like a sentence and post it, but it's more so like what will entertain these people, So I'm learning more so like with my design stuff. Like mentors are saying, like just practice like putting out an idea real fast, because like in a meeting you'll have 10 minutes to like present your idea and your thought process, and that's not something that you have time to like put together a nice ass presentation with like a lot of detail, that kind of stuff. You just have to show like someone like, this is my idea and this is how I plan on executing it. And that's one thing I'm learning from a lot of these people. And some of these mentors, I would say, like, I've reached out to them on LinkedIn, but I mean, some of them don't respond. Like, I consider them mentors because I've listened to their podcasts. Like, their podcasts, like, will tell me their story, and it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't need them to tell me how. Like, I know, like, this is where they went from. I mean, a lot of these opportunities come
the
from
mentors are like a figure that you can learn
yeah,
from.
yeah. I like that a lot. Yeah. I actually have a question for you, Jacques. So, basically, what do you do if someone is switching careers? Like, how do you advise them there? Like, what if someone's like 3 years into their college and they're like, you know what, this isn't for me. Like, I don't want to be stuck doing this for the rest of my life. How do I get out? What do you say to them? Like, financially, like what advice do you give to them? Like,
Great question.
This is going to be applicable to all of us in 3 years' time, Jack. So it better be good.
We're
no
going to be
pressure,
coming
Jack.
for you for advice.
Yeah. I think it's well, yeah. It really depends on this person, right? So, do they have an idea of what or they might be interested in, or are they still exploring a little bit more, or are they asking me how am I going to get into this industry, right? So maybe it might be someone who's originally interested in banking and realized they're interested in law instead, right? So the advice is going to be very different depending on that sort of sector and depending on if they're still exploring. If they're still exploring, I think you should speak to people and you should do things. I think something that's really fantastic about this group of friends around this table right now is we do so much stuff and we make so many things, right? So when Sid floated the idea of making this podcast, right, I had no idea what I would learn from this, right? I had no interest in making a podcast whatsoever, but I've learned so much doing it, right? So together we've made a website, we've done graphic design, making a logo, we've had to work together, sorting out disputes and stuff.
Graphic design.
You can critique our graphic design.
We've had to create like business strategies as to how to like increase sort of expanse, and you learn so much stuff, and you learn what you're interested in, right? So I learned that talking on the podcast, have a microphone. This isn't the thing which I really enjoy about this, right? It's the thing afterwards. It's me sitting down at a table with Sid, trying to work out who are we going to organise next and how are we going to line up speakers for the next 2 months. So just do things and speak to other people who do awesome things.
Yeah, so the main thing we started to achieve with the podcast at the start was, just talking, but making it entertaining. It's very much just an entertainment thing. Then we were like, hey, we're all sort of scientists and Holmes is a really good actor. So, and like Jack worked in social mobility. The idea being like, we all have things that we specialize in and subjects that we can talk about passionately. And then we're like, well, why don't we have other people on who are like passionate in their fields and talk to them? And now it's just like, this is what I love about it, is having people from such diverse backgrounds on and just being able to talk to them all the time.
I guess just circling back, just to answer the other half of that, like, I guess if you understand what you're interested in and you're trying to move into this new industry, once you've spoken to a few people, hopefully you can understand what you need to be doing to sort of move that, right? Right. So I guess if you're looking at your CV and you're trying to look at how can you improve it, right? There's only so much you can do by shuffling words around and moving formatting, right? The way you improve your sort of CV and your application from that point is by going out there and getting experiences, right? So you should be, sitting down and thinking, what do I want to be doing in the next 3 months to sort of improve my CV? And that's something I do still on a sort of every couple of months. I'll sit down on my CV and think, okay, where am I at now? What have I gained? And what do I want to be doing in the next 8 months, right? So if you're still a university student
smart.
out there,
I should do
what
that.
societies are you going to be part of? What talks are you going to organise? What talks are you going to speak at? What presentations are you going to give? What leadership experiences are you going to gain?
It's like, how can you contribute?
Yeah.
What are you doing to get
Ask
your name
not
out there? Sort of
what
thing.
your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
I think that's specific to my field as well. I mean, the same applies really. It's like, if you're not acting, what are you doing that's creative? Yeah. Are you hosting a cabaret? Are you on a podcast?
Yeah.
This is on my CV.
Oh dear.
As it should be. It should be, dude. This is like your baby, man. You gotta You gotta flex it a little bit.
There's something I've been meaning to ask you is like, what's the inspiration for your art? Like when you sit down, because now you say you're doing like multiple sketches per day. How do you get those ideas?
Oh man, this is tough. Like honestly, when I first started out, it was literally just friends, family, like whatever I saw like in Newtown. Like I didn't draw much past that, and I mean that was so bland. Now that I look back at it, like I didn't really have like a process. Now like what I'm trying to do like currently like is if you look at my Instagram, I've been doing a lot more sketching, like architectural sketching, kind of like just buildings and stuff. Like it's not it's not an actual place. It's what I've seen every day, like living in Brooklyn, and also like what I've learned by being like a structural engineering, like working with like streets, like looking at like how a street works, how traffic works, and I'm kind of applying that to the sketches. And that's just kind of like honestly, it was impromptu. Like I just started like it's called freestyling with one of the sketches, and I was like, oh, I really like perspective drawing. Like let me just see what I can do with it. And then it's like I do this every day for work. All I do is like measure streets and like figure out, can this crane be placed here without causing damage? Will it be over like a fire hydrant? Like will it be like anywhere near here? And then it's like, oh, you know all these elements of like what it goes into, like apply it to your design. But something like with my 3D stuff, like my footwear. Footwear depends. Like a lot of it is just like it's a lot of just me experimenting with the sketch, like seeing like where it goes, like shapes I like. Colors I'll just make like a mood board basically of different like swatches and stuff, and then be like, how can I apply this? And a lot of it is just me kind of like messing around on Blender and seeing like, oh wow, like this subdivision effect is so cool. Like the wireframe and then a subdivision. Oh, this will be crazy to render, but it's something I'm just like, oh wow, like I didn't even think about it. But like I have been taking a little break from the 3D just to come back to like the more like the sketching skills and stuff like that. Yeah, just like the more like basic kind of artwork, just to see if I still have it, you know, like when I do more of like the fine art, I would say that that's more of my quality work. Like that shows like, okay, well, this is where you started out. This was the sketch. So if you go back to my Instagram, right, like the second to last post, it's two pictures of a sketch, right? The second picture is kind of like a bland neighborhood, but it's like an orthographic perspective. So it looks like they're all like the same size housing and stuff. It's not like I'm looking from here out here and this is how like the zoom works. It's just like all of it is the same size. It's like you're flying over it with like a plane or whatever. So for stuff like that, it's like that's where it starts out. And then you go to the second page. The second page is kind of like an orthographic perspective, but it has elements of my neighborhood where I currently live in Brooklyn. And for that, I'm focused more on angles, how the street traffic works, and then I'm kind of like adding in more elements. What I'm working on now, most recent sketch. So if you look at the first two sketches, the first one, like obviously like you guys saw, it was kind of bland. It's an orthographic perspective of a neighborhood, pretty suburban, giant open street with literally just like a white picket fence family. Like, you know, like it wasn't anything special. The second one was like a sketch with you now see like a coffee shop, you see like traffic, and you also see like neighborhood pieces. And now I'm going in and adding in like coffee shops, bodegas, traffic in both directions, like adding more lights, adding more features like subways, just stuff that I see every day. Like what I used to do though is I used to plan my piece out so precisely. Like when I was 19, I did a piece of it was basically like it was a piece for, no, I was 18, I was applying to art school. It was a piece of the city that my school was in. So for that, I did, that was a pencil drawing. And for that, I basically like gridded out the piece. So for that, you just take a picture of what you're doing, you put it on Photoshop, put it in a grid, and then you just draw square by square. And I found that very restricting for me because I don't like to just be like confined to the realism aspect. And I kind of figured that out after. When you're not drawing with a reference photo or like a grid, you're able to come up with, you're kind of like on the spot. Like, what am I going to do next? Like, should I take a break, step away, or should I like keep going with the pen? You know, like it's like a permanent action. But I don't know. I'm kind of like losing my train of thought. Like I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. But what I'm trying to do now is not go with the traditional like ruler grid out drawing. I'm trying to see like how well can I think without instruction? How well can I think without a reference image or like something to see, like something to look at while I'm drawing? You know, like it kind of like forces you to like improvise a lot more.
So I see like improvisation popping up. So like, it's weird. Just in so many aspects of my life now, I just see like improvisation popping up. So you're talking about like art. For me, it's music. You start off by learning the rules, like music theory. This is how you should play, and then you stop looking at how you should play, and you just start improvising and experimenting, and that's like how you learn. But I found that when you're just starting out, you need those rules. But I think it depends on the person how quickly you can just not throw those rules out, but then you start like paving your own path.
I think those rules are important when you're learning technique. And once you learn, once you're good at the technique, you know you could achieve that. Now it's like, how am I going to expand the section of my like ideation without just following like a typical like still life drawing of like a bunch of like beer glasses on like a table? Like how do I go past that? You know, like I feel like that sort of thinking is something that I don't have necessarily because, and I'm sure that if I had gone to like a more traditional art school, they would have had like a heavy emphasis on like concept, on like composition, like how things are supposed to look. But I also feel like when you're not in that position, like how did I adapt? Like I mean, my whole thing was like I tried out a bunch of different mediums. Like I did Photoshop. I did a concentration based on Game of Thrones season 7. Like however shit that was. Like I basically like try to like take an episode and see how it inspired me. So like I mean, if you scroll down on my Instagram, like there's a group of pictures that are related to each episode. Especially like the finale of season 7, the dragon and the wolf. I didn't even go off of like what the content of the episode was. I'm sure all of you guys have seen it, right? Like Game of Thrones and all that.
I haven't.
Oh my god, ridiculous. Well, I mean, now you're not missing much, but everything's out there.
Season 7.
I am no longer culturally required to watch Game of Thrones since the ending.
Yeah.
So I'm good. I can skip it.
You're like, oh, thank God I didn't waste 8 years of my life.
Exactly.
Yeah, but going back to it, so based on that, I went off the name. I like the name, the title of the episode, Dragon and the Wolf, and I just kind of like, I don't remember what exactly my inspiration was, but I always have like a fascination with like dragons, fantasy, like swords, weapons, all that kind of stuff. Like, and I just decided to make it like a wolf head mountain, basically. So it looks like it's like the colors of the piece. I basically pick like a shade of yellow, a shade of like medium level green, and then like a dark like olive green basically. And I kind of just like put together this graphics piece on Illustrator. For that started out as a sketch based on the name, and it was just kind of like improv, like what you like. That too, I don't really know how to critique my work outside of like concept, because I think that I've developed technique. I don't know what else I could do to be improving as an artist, as someone who was in like a art school or like a architecture school, whatever. They would have had like weekly critiques or whatever, and like kind of like been told like, okay, this is how you improve. For me, it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't really have that like coach, you know, like it's kind of like, that's why I just keep making. Like I'll keep making, and I feel like if I start to get that instruction now, it'll be a little bit limiting, because I will be trying to like design for that mold, you know, like it's like, don't design for a job, like design for yourself, and then let the jobs come see you. That being said though, like you do, like when you are in an industry, you have to be open to like obviously criticism and all that stuff, and also like you have to listen more than you like talk or whatever. And I will learn how to do that more once I'm in that kind of field. But right now I've been kind of just working myself. Like in college I was a freelance graphic designer. I would have to come up with my contract myself. I would have to figure out who I'm working with. Do I trust them? Like, am I getting ripped off? Most of the time I was getting dramatically ripped off. Like it was like I was making less than like $1 per hour based on how much time it would take me to like put in. And I kind of realized like I don't want to be designing for someone else. Like if I don't have any instruction right now, like might as well just keep designing for me and then see how it goes. So yeah, so I would definitely say like process wise, there's still so much development I need for projects basically, but I would say for like the fine arts and stuff, I don't really like need instruction, or I don't really need that kind of advice right now because I'm only doing that for myself. I mean, for me right now, it's personal entertainment. It's not like this drawing is going to get me a job. It's not like this drawing is going to set me like anywhere in a position where I'm doing something else. I'm still going to be going.
Yeah, it's like you do it because you want
I'm
to.
still going to work right now, and it's not like I'm having a career change right away. But in order to have that like kind of career development, career changes, whatever, I will have to adapt my style a little bit. I will have to start drawing for the mold, just so that I have those pieces. But I also will maintain pieces of my own where it shows my like individual expression and kind of like how I think, how I like to think without anybody looking at me and just kind of like.
It's almost like going back into the mold. You still add your own personal style into it, but you have to get out of the mold to learn that personal style and develop yourself.
Let me talk about one of the projects I started and I'm working on now. Basically, like, I think after graduating college, I did one last commission for a coffee company. I mean, it was fine. I think the execution was fine, well done, but I don't really know where they went with it, and I didn't really enjoy the process. I was listening to this podcast by it was a video lecture, and if you guys look up Jeff Staple, he's one of my idols. Basically, he runs his own podcast called The Business of Hype. He runs his own brand. He's a graphic designer by background, but basically in one of his talks, a video lecture where he was being interviewed, he said when you're doing commission art, right, like freelance art, you have to have 2 of the 3 F's, and I think it was like financial, fun, and folio. So basically, like, are you being paid well? Is it for fun? And does this add to my portfolio? And basically, if you have 2 of the 3 of those, it's worth doing the commission. Otherwise, like, you're going to be miserable by the end of it. And I kind of realized that. Like, I didn't know, like, the method or whatever. I realized that after I graduated college, it was like, I'm chasing after, like, petty cash right now. I don't know how to price myself. I don't know why I'm doing this. It's not fun for me. So I started, like, kind of thinking about, like, what did I like to draw? Like, what was my subject matter that I enjoyed making? And, like, it was fantasy, it was stories, like, it was just kind of, like, human life. Like, kind of a lot of the struggles of a frustrated brown boy growing up in America, you know? Like, a lot of that was, what I used to draw, like, on the side, like, small stuff that, like, most people haven't even seen. Like, I have sketchbooks with, like, just, like, they're not professional level sketches. They're just kind of, like, ideation of me just, like, stream of consciousness drawing, where I like, point arrows at things. So, that brings me to one of my projects I'm working on now. So, my buddy, it's kind of like a little anecdote. My buddy, John, he basically had a snake in college. It was, like, a little ball python called Lil Slither. And basically, he'd bring it out to parties and stuff, and, like, it would just be in his pocket, and then, like, the next thing you know, he's just, like, putting it on your hand, and you're like, oh my god, what? But basically, for quarantine, he bought a second snake. Because, why the not? You know, like, same kind of snake, like, same brand, whatever, like,
same
looks
brand.
a little bit different.
Same
Species. Nah, but I'm, like, looking at this on his Snapchat story, and I just, like, I don't know what kind of mood I was in. I finished work for the day. I'm pretty sure it was like a Friday, and I just like had like an idea. Like I was like, oh wow, like what? I was like, yo, you got a snake and snake, or is that the same one? And he said like, oh no, I got one to mate with my snake, and I was like, all right, cool. And then it just kind of like that idea like popped up in my head. Like I was like, why not make like a story about this? Like call it like a quarantine tale, you know, like but TAIL, like kind of like a snake tail, whatever.
Of course, yeah.
So. But I basically called this kid up immediately, and I was like, yo, I got an idea, like, I'm gonna make a short film about this, like, your snakes, and I was like, is that cool with you? And he was like, yeah, 100%, like, I'm so down to, like, if you make that, like, that'd be amazing. So, have you guys ever seen the movie Scent of a Woman?
No, but I've heard about it.
So, like, the main thing, you don't need to have seen that movie, but there is a tango scene, right? And it's a blind Al Pacino dancing with a girl, like, on a dance floor he can't really see. Like, I mean, he just knows the coordinates. But the song is called Por una Cabeza. And it's, like, a very traditional, like, tango song. And it slaps. Like, it's a nice song. So, basically, the way the song works is kind of, like, how I was going to apply it to this concept. And I was like, you know what? Let me just make this, like, a dramedy. Like, you know, like, something... Like a story that doesn't need to happen. Like both of these snakes are just sitting in the corner of like your room, like you're just looking at them. But why not make like some sort of like dramatic romance about all this shit? So basically, my idea was the song starts out like very, very, very like calm, it's like a melodious song, and then you hit like a downbeat, and then it picks up and it's like very loud, and then it comes back down, and then it picks back up like real fast. So basically, if you listen to the way the song works, it fits with the story really well. And I started saying like, all right, what do I want for this calm part? So I thought about like the environment that the snakes are from. So like they're from Africa, and basically like I was just like, all right, why not just visualize like what comes to your mind, like don't make it like some sort of like political like background. Just what do you think of something very simple like of like a backdrop? Like what would the environment be like? So I think of like hills, I think of like some like tall grass, like a tree, and then I think of like a snake hole. So I'm just like keeping it very simple with those like 4 elements or whatever. And my whole plot is basically the snakes are kind of like just chilling the whole day and just kind of like just I was just gonna animate them doing like some cool paths and stuff and have some cool camera angles. And then basically when the song gets to like the downbeat, what happens up to there? The plot is one of the snakes falls into this like snake trap. It's like a PVC pipe trap, and the camera's gonna follow it, kind of like some Wes Anderson style film. And basically, when the snake gets into the other side of the hole, he's in the box. And the whole like downbeat, like dramatic sequence is the snake seeing his partner, like running down after him, whatever. And then the next thing you know is when it comes back down on the melodious part, the snake is in the bedroom of like a kid. And basically, I was just kind of like storyboarding this idea. So then the second part of that was developing this idea. Like, what else am I going to do? Is this just going to be like a short animation of this guy moving into a box? And I said, like, no, like, let me make it a short film. Like, I want to make it like a 3-4 minute thing. And basically, I kind of like this idea of like showing time through objects and stuff. Like, you guys ever see the movie Up?
Yeah.
Like the Disney movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that beginning sequence, I was like, that is like one of the most like I think that's one of the most beautifully done like sequences in
Absolutely fantastic.
animated film. Like
I think Jack thinks it's overrated, if I remember correctly.
I mean, I think it drags on a little bit, but like I think that but it's good though.
We shouldn't trust Jack's taste in film.
No.
This guy likes La La Land.
That's kind of like what inspired me with this idea to mainly that sequence from Up. I wanted to show time through media. So I have a PS4. My first console was a PS2. Like I wanted to show like, well, I mean, that if you show time through media, I mean like PS4 came out in probably like 2014, right? Like I mean we were juniors in high school. I don't know how old you guys are. Like Sid and I were juniors in high school. PS2 came out like when we were like first or second grade. Like we were so much younger. It's a completely different time. But yeah, no. So I just want to show like how time has evolved. How like, I mean, it's kind of like limiting in the fact that it's just like it's from like the mindset of like a kid growing up in the 2000s, 2010s or whatever. Like, so I'll show like how posters change, how like an environment change, and basically the perspective is that of the snake who's in a cage. So basically there's a plot that goes on from there. You guys will see it when it comes out. I don't know when I'm going to finish this. But
dude, I really want to see this short film.
Yeah.
I don't
You
know.
hype this
I don't
up.
know about
Okay.
you guys, but I am hyped for this.
How do you create the perspective of the snake?
Okay, so what I've modeled out so far, I basically made the rooms, I've made the snakes. Basically, you can set up multiple camera rigs in Blender, and you can follow like a snake on a path or whatever. So I want to show like, kind of like, I don't know how to show like a snake aging yet. I'm still doing more research about it, but I've like studied like a little bit, just very general knowledge of like how a snake behaves in isolation, how a snake behaves when it's scared or whatever. Like the specific model of this. Species of the snake. I keep talking about it like it's like a brand new car. Like,
Yeah.
One other thing with this whole thing is there's so many things in the background, right? Like, there's so many details that, like if you look at like a Toy Story film, right? Like they all have like those same kind of details. You want to make the focus about it on the snake. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a lot of like lens blur effects so that the focus object is the snake. And the thing I want to like share about this is all these like lens effects and whatever, I've been learning them with different projects as I go along. So there's like different render engines and all that stuff, and I learned about all that like just through YouTube and like Instagram, like looking at other Blender artists.
Yeah, I'm seeing that you've done a lot of work with shoes, and you mentioned earlier that you've always been interested in shoes. Why are shoes interesting to you? Why?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know, man. Like I think for me, like, especially like a good pair of shoes just makes everyone feel good. You know, like it's as cliche as that sounds, man. Like it's like a pride thing. You know, like when you're sporting a nice pair of shoes. But for me, I think that process of footwear, it's just like you can focus in on such a specific, like if you're interested in materials, you can just develop a material that can be applied to like a footwear technology, whatever, and it's just like there's so many aspects to the process. I think that's what appeals to me. Like, I mean, there are people who like engineer new technologies. I know like Gore-Tex, like especially like they make a lot of materials for like outdoor brands and stuff. I think that is so cool. As a brand itself, they don't really sell their own clothing. What they do is they'll work with like all these other brands and they'll bring that technology to them, and then those shoes will be resold for like super high amounts of money, like a couple thousand or whatever, just because you got not only such a high end shoe, but you also have this technology that appeals to it. So for me, like I'm interested in footwear technology in addition to hype footwear. Like I'm not really so much focused on like, oh, what did Off-White do with like what did they decide to reverse engineer? What color paperclip did they put on a shoe this time? That's not what it's interesting to me. It's more so interesting like how does this shoe work like functionally? Like what is unique about this shoe? Like here, Nike Reacts, right? Like I bought the shoe on sale like last year. I was like super hyped up because this was like Nike's like big staple like of 2019, I think. And basically what's attractive to me is this shoe, it can be like completely folded up. It's transparent. Oh, it's called translucent. So you can not only like wear a nice shoe that's like got like a heavy bottom, so it's like it's got a good support. It's fashionable, and it also can like highlight whatever socks you're wearing. So stuff like that kind of thought process of like, okay, well you not only just engineered a good shoe, but you also like put in like consideration like how does this fit with my outfit? Like what else can I do with my outfit that makes this shoe unique? You know, like I think that's just a product that appeals to me. Like from a young age, like I always wanted basketball shoes. I probably had like it wasn't like that we couldn't afford basketball shoes. It was just my parents come from a background of like purchasing what you need
Frugality, almost.
versus what you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was also like I kind of developed a similar mentality with like what I buy. So I don't go out and splurge too often. But what I'll do is I'll make sure I buy myself a pair of fresh shoes every year. You know, like for me, that's what makes me happy. And I think from a practicality standpoint, for me to get into some sort of design industry, I think that my background in engineering is going to help me more so for like something like footwear design than it will for graphic design. That's just because my skill sets and my experience can be kind of like combined with like the product design, industrial design, which goes into footwear making. So that's another like reason why I'm kind of like, all right, well, practically like this does make sense. Like if I decide to go all in, I still have an engineering career to fall back on, but I'm still applying some of the same skill sets from that to this. So I guess that's why footwear appeals to me. But yeah, I'm still figuring out what elements of footwear like I'm really interested in. Like I don't know all the answers. Like I'm still like kind of like figuring a little bit more out every month, like kind of like learning like within different industries like golf, soccer, like how do shoes work. I do like it's not a podcast necessarily, but I do a sneaker talk with my friend Harvey. He basically is in med school for podiatry, and every week we go through and analyze a different footwear designer, and then now we're kind of transitioning it to different materials and technology that are in footwear. So
Oh wow.
like I'm kind of like learning. It's kind of like external research, like, but I'm just kind of like figuring out information that you won't really learn unless you go out of your way. Like I mean, like Hypebeast and all, they'll know about it because they study it nonstop. But for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm sitting in an office 40 hours a week, 40 plus hours a week. Like this is how I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn by like working with my friend, just doing like some research and just discuss like what is unique about this like brand. What did they do with this project that they executed, whatever. So that's how I'm kind of like learning more about like the.
That sounds awesome.
I was gonna say that already sounds way more interesting than this podcast. So please,
Yo,
what do you
do
mean?
transition over.
I think it is cool though, like when I don't want to have like a huge audience if I was ever to do a podcast. You know, like podcast is kind of like your
I love how niche that sounds. No. Honestly, though, I love how niche the idea of just talking about like sneakers. You know, you from design, him from like the medical point of view, and just like talking about something that specific. That just sounds so awesome. I want to listen to that more than I want to listen to our own podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'll consider it.
Dude, we're gonna have you on.
Honestly,
again, 'cause-
like, if you guys are open to it, I would love to sit in on some of these talks from time to time. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
No, I know.
Should have like
Dude,
open
we just
shares for, like-
No. We're canceling this show and we're doing the sneaker show now.
Yeah, we're all going to jump over to that podcast.
Shoes
We're
and
jumping on
snakes.
that bandwagon. That sounds better. Shoes and snakes.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a good name.
yeah, I mean, I could start wrapping this up, a little bit. So basically, for like people who are still in learning and stuff, when you are trying to build that technique, learn a lot through YouTube and learn from like what other people do in industry. And if you can, like, some people will make some really complex animations and renders and stuff. If you can slightly mimic that, you start to build up more and more technique. I think when I started, I was started the digital arts. I was a sophomore in college. I basically like had an illegal download of Photoshop. Adobe, don't kill me, but basically like I was in an engineering dorm, right? So everybody had Photoshop, everyone had everything just because they had it on a flash drive. They found some way to hack everything. So like they gave me like Photoshop and Illustrator, and I was like, that's perfect. Because I started projects like, if I see a picture on there, how do I make it look cartoony? You know, like I see like a simple poster effect, but how do you make it not look all super pixelated and stuff? So what I would do is I would go on YouTube, type in cartoon me or whatever, and basically I started by learning low poly imaging. So low poly imaging is also something that's used in 3D art, like low polygons or whatever. So you make like basically take like a image of someone and triangulate the whole face and then just dye it like the average color. So like say my skin, right? Like I'm a brown guy, right? So like obviously there's parts of my face that are dark brown depending on lighting and stuff. Just average that, make it a very simple piece. And for me, that was like my introduction to like graphic design. And granted, like some people use that in their logos. It can come off being tacky. For me, I learned that technique, and I learned a lot about like using the basic tools like the paintbrush, the pen tool, and like the eyedropper, something to get colors from. Then towards like the end of my like sophomore year, or whatever, I had been learning just how to like draw in Illustrator. So I had no idea like what each thing was used for. Like Illustrator's used for logos, vector based scalable images. So if anything that you want to like make that's more illustrated, you make it on Illustrator, and then you take it to Photoshop. And I didn't know how they like fit together. I just would use one for one thing, Photoshop for the other thing. After doing it for like a year, I started getting like better at doing it, and I would learn different shortcuts, and like I kind of like started memorizing the keyboard. And I realized like it's not so much about like how fast can you learn it, it's how fast can you learn the shortcuts that'll help you later on, because a lot of these shortcuts apply to the different software. So like when you learn from one thing, it's like you'll understand what layers do in another software, and you go, when you're trying to learn a new software, you go look for those similarities and then you pick it up that way. So like Photoshop and Illustrator, they do things differently with locking their layers and their visibility and stuff, and you can basically like hide things so then you can see things more clearly, work on this layer and then put it back on, turn on the original layer, so then you can like kind of see a layered piece. And then I started applying this to more digital art. I took one digital art class my junior year. It wasn't so much teaching me digital art, it was more so just gave me an opportunity to do it. So like there was a project in Photoshop, that dragon and the wolf piece, that was on Illustrator based on the Game of Thrones episode. And basically what I did with this piece, this was in my class. What I did with this piece, I sketched it out first. I took it on Photoshop and I made like a very simple like trace of it. Like I used like a drawing. I used like a pen and I just like traced over like what my sketch was in my head. And then I used that Photoshop sketch as like a guide for Illustrator. And when I was on Illustrator, I was able to like use like a pen tool to make it more precise. And then I could just worry about colors and how gradients work. And Illustrator makes it very easy for that. So I learned how to like kind of like start in Photoshop, go to Illustrator, and then I learned to go back to Photoshop for final touches like refinement, scale, blurs, and like any sort of like touch-ups that you need to do. I learned to do that in Photoshop, and I kind of like figured out that like, okay, these like little projects and stuff, that'll help you. Like they're starting to help me. Like the junk projects that I did the year before, I was like, okay, well, each thing I learned, I picked up and got faster at doing it. So basically, that was my college, like learning how to do this. And basically, I was able to find a research position, which I recommend to everybody. Like, regardless of who the professor is, find a research position that will allow you to, find a research position that lets you, kind of experiment on your own, and kind of build whatever skill sets you want. So, like, I got lucky, like, I was kind of, like, left on my own to kind of, like, do whatever, and my research was in digital fabrication. And that's, like, laser cutting, a wood shop, all that kind of stuff, like, kind of stuff that you can do in an engineering school. But this was more so, like, I was getting paid to do it, and it was in an art school setting. So I was doing it for the art school. I was teaching the students, like, how do you use Photoshop Illustrator, and how do you apply it to engineering techniques. So that was the end of my junior year and senior year, second half of the junior year. I was working for a year and a half, applying all the graphic design skills I learned on my own to, like, kind of like a more technical setting, like, how do you use the software. So I was learning how to, like, I was teaching people how to, like, use the software to make files that can be printed, that can be cut, you know, like, I'll show you guys some of the samples, but I would do a lot of wood cuts and laser burns, whatever. So I would just teach them the very basics of operating an Illustrator file, keeping things organized, whatever. And it kind of helped me out because, I mean, it just strengthened my skills and my ability to use the software and kind of optimize things to, like, work better for me. So that led me to, like, kind of where I'm at now. So I put all the graphic design stuff on the back burner. If I need to, I can pick it back up and I can learn it again. And every once in a while, if I have a whim and I want to, like, try a different technique, I'll try to do 2 or 3 pieces in that technique, and each time get faster and use a different skill set to make it, like, more optimized. So
Nice. I think that's a really good place to stop. I don't mean to, like, go your flow, but yeah, dude, it's been, like, real nice having you on. We gotta have you on.
Yeah,
again.
Definitely.
Because we just have, like, so much stuff to talk about.
no, it was good. It was good to meet you guys.
No, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I do love this sort of enthusiasm to just produce and just to, like, go out there and try. You know, I feel like so many people are just too afraid to even begin. And I think the fact that you've taken those steps and you're actively trying every single day, that's really, really awesome.
But you can find us on Gmail at speaking.ignorance@gmail.com, Twitter it's @fromignorance. We're on YouTube, Spotify and Anchor FM, mainly for the audio version of the podcast, but you can also find us at our website, sfignorance.github.io, domain name pending, and Facebook. Aditya, do you want to plug your social media?
Oh, yeah. So, thanks for having me, guys. This was a pleasure to explain my journey and, like, discuss the education and design, whatever. So my personal art page is Drawings by Deech. Deech is DEECH. And my products page is at Deech_ID, like industrial design. And my website is drawingsbydeech.com. Feel free to reach out. I don't have a technical background in design education, but I do have plenty of experience using different kinds of software in graphic design, 3D design, and illustration. So, thanks again.
And if you're interested in making shoes, then contact Deech.
Yeah, let's link and build.
Yeah.
That's just be on the lookout for a fantastic shoe-based podcast in the future.
Snakes and shoes.
All right. Snakes and shoes.
Yeah, and for the short film.
Yeah.
Coming to a cinema.
Quarantine Tale coming this November.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you next week.